Hello, this is Don Victor, author of Drawn to Win, host of the podcast Drawn to Win, the director of the Academy of Composition, and the creator of the Core 80 Experience, also known as the See and Grow Rich in Art video course, which you can find out more information at core80.com. This is the Drawn to Win podcast, where I have the incredible privilege to draw artists from around the world into fun and meaningful conversations around art and life, and yes, maybe even a little food. You can hear us each week on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube. So make sure you subscribe so you always have a seat among friends. Let's get into the show. Well, Alison, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Awesome. So, let me ask you, what are you currently working on in your studio?
Well, I just finished a commission piece, which I don't do too many commission pieces, but this one came from a longtime friend who lives in California. I'm in Michigan. And she had a photograph that she had taken in Burma, and it was a kind of image that I never would have painted on my own. And so I took it on as a challenge, a serious challenge. It was a photo that was taken above a pond, and there were lily pads on the pond, and there was major reflection of the clouds above. And normally I'm a landscape painter or a still life painter, architectural things. And so I thought, wow, I mean, it would be just a flat plane, trying to figure out the reflection. So I approached it in a totally new way. And so it was exciting. I was glad to be able to do that because the main thing that I'm working on is a Michigan Lakes series. So they can be small paintings that are about 6 by 6 across and up to 24 by 36. I actually have one going on right now that's 36 inches square. So that's like the biggest that I've done since college, which is 25 years ago. So anyway, views
Awesome.
from the lakes, because living in Michigan, everything is about the lakes. We're surrounded by the Great Lakes, and we travel all the time throughout the state. And so Lake Huron and Lake Michigan primarily, or smaller inland lakes that we travel to, it's just about the atmosphere, the colors on the water, things like that, which is a departure again from doing real landscape studies that have to do with field and grass or still life subjects. I still work on those, but I was trying to come up with an actual body of work, more than 10 paintings, maybe 20, 25 paintings that all had to do with the lake series.
Oh, nice. So let me ask you with the lake, because you were saying the way you were engaging with the lake is much more from the perspective of an observer, right? You're
Right.
saying the colors on the lake and this and that. How would you describe your relationship with the lake in terms of verbs? Like, how does it make you feel, or what is it that you do, or what does it trigger inside of you? Um, what does the lake trigger inside of you when you're around it?
Okay. Well, many people probably throughout the world don't understand really how massive the Great Lakes are. It's like an ocean. You stand on the coast, you cannot see the other side. It's an ocean, freshwater ocean. And so they act like that. They have huge waves breaking on the sand. There are dunes that are 10 stories high. It's really impressive. So there is an element of, there's peacefulness, and then there's excitement. There could be barges going by on the lake. There's a lot going on. It's not like you're just surrounded by pine trees, in the woods with this little lake. It's a very different experience if you've never been. So I'd say that there's this solitude, but then the energy of how the massive clouds that come by and the different weather. The weather patterns are really dramatic. So
Hmm.
it
No,
so
no.
you can add all of those things into it, the sunrise and the sunset. And I'm never literal with a sun. It's just about the atmosphere
Mm-hmm.
and the environment that's being created by the weather patterns and the light.
That's awesome. Um, when you're seeing those large clouds move by and the vastness of the lake, and you
Mhm.
see these large dunes and the big waves, do you feel small in those moments, or do you feel big in those moments?
I think there's an element of both because you can stand on the edge of Lake Michigan 1,000 times, and it's surprising every single time
Hmm.
how enormous these lakes are. And but at the same time, when I've gone so many times, you become a part of that environment. We travel to Lake Huron, which is on the opposite side of the state, and there you just feel at home. So I guess there is an element of feeling large, because this is your area.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's kind of like having a pet dragon. It's like this
Which I
large
don't have.
It's like this large beast, and yet you have this personal, intimate relationship with this enormous sense of this enormous creature of power. And where most people would probably look at it from a distance and say, "Oh, that's big," or "That's frightening," or "That's whatever," um, because there's a level of intimacy with it. Um, it is big, it is powerful, and yet what I hear you were saying is like there's a relationship there that there's also a harmony and a peace and a like you said home within it.
Hmm.
I've trained a couple artists out of Michigan, and what you're saying is interesting because it's things I've heard before, and so I've never seen the Great Lakes, um, and outside of the fear of being too cold. Uh, which is probably the only reason why I would not go. Um, but now I'm very interested in seeing this thing, um so that's really cool. That's really cool. And yeah, I can totally see 20 paintings or 25 paintings of your experiences with the lakes. um I always try to encourage artists to we have this natural ability to observe, especially what we see, and I always try to nudge them in that direction of really, really um, taking time to articulate both with words as well as within your paint, um, that energy and that feeling, and doing it in a way that when other people look at your painting, they feel that in this case is hugeness, and yet at the same time you feel home. And
Hmm.
Norman Rockwell he said one of the secrets to his success was that he could make a viewer feel two emotions in the same painting. Um, and so if someone looks at your painting, they have that sensation like, holy crap, that thing is huge. And yet at the same time, not feel that it's intimidating, that they're actually safe within its hugeness. Um, you've now triggered two emotions, which now makes the person feel alive when viewing your artwork. Also, the fact that they go from one emotion to another, it passes time. So now the image isn't still. It's actually there's a moment of time that it actually captures. So it does all these neat little things inside the psyche. Um, and it seems like you're able to articulate those things. So that's really cool. That's cool. Do you
I
have a
don't know if I'll ever be able to. Oh, I'm sorry. I
oh,
was just going to say I don't know if I'd ever be able to capture in my work the vastness. I think that I could do depth, but width, that's kind of impossible. So what I've been trying to do is mostly focus on what it feels like when you're there,
Mm-hmm.
what the color is doing. Because really, when you look at a lake, it's a horizon line. That's really what you're doing. You're painting a horizon, and so yeah, you have to think about what's above the horizon and what's below, and how
Mm-hmm.
those colors can play with each other.
Well, if you're not working on a like a wide canvas, you said depth, right? So you need to
Right.
like throw the person deep into the image. Um,
Exactly.
so one way of looking at it is like looking at the lake from your perspective. Like where you're standing there, and then you're looking out your eyes, and you're trying to capture that horizon. Um, it could also be kind of interesting to see, like, if you're standing on the edge of the lake and you're looking out, and let's say there was a bird that was flying at your eye level, like towards you along the
Mhm.
sea, like along the edge. What would be the perspective of that bird? Because that would then give you that depth, and you could probably trigger the vastness, hugeness of the lake, even in a small painting, by focusing it on maybe like the lake, the shoreline versus the horizon line. Um,
Mhm.
you know, and so those might be some different perspectives that might help. I think what you're saying about the depth of it, I think there's a secret in there, and that if you explore could really unlock a lot of power for you. Um, yeah. So, um, have you always been around the lake? Did you grow up there, or were you originally from
We never had
California or
our.
something?
Oh no, I'm a Michigan native. I'm originally from Lansing, East Lansing area, which is it's in the lower part of the state. So we have the Upper Peninsula and the Lower Peninsula. So we're in the Lower Peninsula. We call it the
And the
Mitten,
thumb?
and
Yeah,
we're
the mitten.
dead center in the middle of the state. And so it's the Great Lakes are a 2-hour drive in
Mm,
either direction. So it's really close. And I went to sleepaway camps when I was young, right near the lake, and we never had a home, a summer cottage or anything. But I visited with friends. I mean, that's just kind of a standard thing that a lot of people have is some sort of cabin on the lake.
mhm.
And so I've been going there, yeah, as long as I can possibly remember, and go multiple times a summer, even now. The one thing that I'm trying to do is paint more outside.
Mm,
I do drawings and I take a lot of photographs, but I just bought my very first plein air easel last summer, and I'm a little nervous. I feel very uncomfortable working outdoors. I haven't quite gotten in the groove with that, so that's something that I want to work on more this year. So,
now
anyhow,
why
oh,
is why do you
I
feel
have no idea.
the need for that?
Why do I feel the need to pursue it, or why haven't I done it before?
No, no, why do you feel a need that you have to pursue it?
Because I'm really attracted to other artists who do plein air work. On site, right there, a la prima, just getting it down. And whenever I see an artist in real life who's doing it, or watch videos of people who are working on site, it just seems so amazing to be able to capture it all right then and there, or get the base of it down and then you can finish it up in the studio. So, plus things change when you're on site. And so then it seems like you have to be more on your game to get it done, instead of, I'm going to work on this painting for 3 weeks just based on the photograph from when I was there. So I think, again, it's just more of a challenge, a breakthrough that would be good for me. And who knows? I mean, maybe my paintings would be better, but there's plenty of artists who work in the studio from a photo.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the plein air thing is interesting. It's a very interesting little creature. Um, I think it's an incredible opportunity to sketch in paint, um, and capture nuances and things that are there, and energies and whatnot. And I always like the idea of going there, doing that, and then taking it back and then designing, composing, drafting it out in a studio and really, really making it into a masterpiece. Um,
Mhm.
I'm not I'm not really a big believer in the idea that a plein air painting on spot really ever can become a masterpiece. And I know I probably just pissed off a lot of people in saying that. Um, but I think it's a very interesting movement, and I think there's a lot of value in it. Um, but I think like if you want to get to like master level, like there's so much greatness in those plein air paintings that if you take those and then go and elevate them, um, there can be some beautiful and powerful things that come out of those things. Um, but yeah, uh, it'll be interesting to see the difference. In your studio, do you stand when you paint, or are you sitting?
It depends on the size of the work.
Mm,
If it's small, I sit. I sit on a tall stool,
mhm,
so I keep it high. But I like to I like to sit because I do a lot of paint mixing. I spend more time mixing my paint
mhm,
probably than I do applying the paint, and so it's the word tedious seems negative, but it takes a long time, So I'm just mixing and mixing and mixing, and I like to just relax when I'm doing that instead of standing there
yeah,
at my glass palette and just working on it
mhm,
forever. So yeah, but if I have a larger piece, I need to be able to move around it a bit more. Like when I was
mhm,
doing my 36-inch square piece, I need more arm movement, and so
mhm.
I think that it's easier to stand. Um, so yeah, a little bit of both, I guess.
That's cool. Do you find do you find the mixing very zenish for you?
Oh yeah, sure. I This is the one thing when I was in college. I got my BFA from Maine College of Art in Portland, Maine,
Mm,
and that's where I really, really learned about color mixing, and partly because we did a lot of uh, color theory classes and things like that,
mhm,
and trying to not get mud, right?
yeah,
And then I was working in oil, and I work in acrylic now, but it was it was a matter of how can I mix what I see? That I need to learn how to do that. And does it need more red? Where is the gray? Like, where is it on the chart? Is it warm
mhm,
gray? Is it cool gray? And so I will just mix 10 different shades of a certain hue and try to figure out what is it that it needs. And I mix it with the palette knife, and then I hold it up to the artwork and I say, that's wrong. And I go back and I mix another one. I hold it up and then I think, oh, you know what? What I just mixed isn't going to work for that spot, but it's going to work over here. So I'll just
mhm,
kind of move the palette around and just kind of match it, so to speak, of where
mhm.
I think it would work best when it's having that resonance with something else that's already there. And so, yeah, I'm obsessed with mixing my paint.
That's
So
awesome.
I have a very limited palette, so I don't buy 50 different tubes of paint in every range. I try to figure out, can I make that? Because I feel like that's a skill that I will continue to learn how to
Mhm.
do and get better and better.
That was when looking over your paintings, I was seeing that like your colors are actually really, really um they're very they're clean, and yet they also have a very muted grade to them, right?
Yeah.
So they're not overly
Yeah.
saturated and stuff. And
Right.
I remember when I was learning color control, um, we were often told like you want it almost like the like dying roses, like um, where you just want this beautiful palette of grays, but each color um, has its own integrity. It's not muddy. It's not you know dingy, which is very
Hmm.
difficult. And when you see that, I'm always impressed by painters who can keep their color clean without making it look like it just came out of a tube, you know? um,
Right. That's my biggest pet peeve, I think, with artists is when you can tell that they're not mixing their own paint. And I it's not that I feel like it's cheating because I know a lot of people do. I just feel like it's it's a shortcut and they're limiting their growth, by just buying pale yellow. It's like, can't you just make it? Just I mean, you have to have like maybe a cool yellow and a warm yellow, but then just make it. Find out how the company created that color.
hmm,
And so yeah, the whole idea of ultramarine out of the tube and onto the canvas just is like, no, stop right there. So, and my instructors who were really, really amazing, they had said, even if you want it to be that intense and you want to have that vibrancy and saturation, put something in it, something else, just
hmm.
the opposite, or a little bit of burnt umber. Just do something to it to alter it just enough that it's yours. And it made all the difference in the world.
Hmm. That's nice. Yeah, it's um I think a lot of times artists do that for a few reasons. One, I think primarily out of ignorance. Um,
Yeah.
they just don't know, and you don't know what you don't know, and so they think, oh yeah, I bought a color, and I can just use that color. Um, and then those who do know, who don't do it, well, that's just lazy. Um, but
I was trying not to say that, but yeah.
I'll take the arrows for you.
Okay, thank
Um,
you.
uh, but I think primarily it's just ignorance. It's just they just don't know, and because it's very interesting. There's a lot of color courses, a lot of color theory things out there, um, and have you ever heard of a system called the Fletcher system?
It's not ringing a bell. If you describe it, I might.
There's a guy named Frank Maury Fletcher. Um, he's no longer alive. He's like, I don't know, 100 years ago or whatever it was, um, and well, not that long ago, but he created a system of color which is really like in tuned with music. And one of the neat things about his system is he actually has uh he doesn't call it color theory, he calls it color control, color and palette control.
Mhm.
It teaches you how to control your color, your palette. But what's interesting is he has this notation system where he explains that there are three elements to a color. There's the color, the hue, the value, and the saturation. And we were trained to be able to go out, look at, a scene, let's say the lake, and just with a pencil, note take all of the colors very, very quickly by just drawing these two little lines in the dot and a number. And so
Hmm.
let's say on a scale, a value scale from 0 to 9, or let's say 1 to 9, 1 being white, 9 being black. You can pick your little number to notate the value, the darkness of that color. And then using a little circle, like think of it like a clock. Like if you put it at, let's say, 12 o'clock, well, that would be a yellow. If you put it at a
Mhm.
3 o'clock, it'd be green. Um,
Okay.
or blue. I mean, and so you can pick your hue, and then along that little line, uh, what we would do is hit five different markers. So if it was at the end of the line, it would be full saturation, let's say yellow, right? And if it was
Mhm.
somewhere in between, you put a little line in between, and then you could break it down to five areas. So it was a fascinating way of quickly notating a color based on nine values, five different levels of saturation, and then 12 different color choices. And it just mm, he has a PDF. You can just like go online and type in Fletcher color control PDF, and then you can download it um, and read through it. But it's just very, very fascinating, and he gives you kind of like a science to matching color um,
Hmm.
in chords and all kinds of combinations that are just beautiful. They're just beautiful the way they work together. Um,
Yeah, I'll check that out.
yeah, and I think you would enjoy it because if you enjoy the color mixing, I remember it was just kind of crazy when I was younger, where I was studying. There were some more advanced students at that time, and you'd walk in and you'd see their glass palettes, right? And they would have
Hmm.
every like every color. You swear there was like hundreds of colors on one palette, but they would have every color pre-mixed before they would apply it to the canvas. And
Right.
it was they were just beautiful. I mean, just to see palettes full of organized color was it was gorgeous. It was like a work of
That's
art in
what that's
itself.
exactly that's exactly what my instructors told us to do was spend an hour before you put the brush to the canvas just
Mm,
mixing the paint. Try to foresee what you want and then work from there, and
mhm,
then you can add or subtract to it as you go. Combine the two that aren't quite right or something like that, and so that transformed everything for me. I had transferred to that school to Maine College of Art as a junior because I had gone to the Art Institute of Philadelphia
mm,
for 2 years. I got a visual communications degree because I thought that I should do something that might make a living. And but then I decided after that that I was more intrigued by the art history courses that I had taken
mm,
to get that degree than I was in doing the graphic design and
mhm,
advertising portion. So I came back home from Philadelphia to Lansing and attended the community college here and really just took art history courses. I took figure painting and life drawing and English courses, and then thought, this is it. Like this is really what I want to do. So I transferred over. Well, when I entered as a junior, uh, the teachers said, forget everything that you ever thought that you knew because you're wrong. You need to start over. And I was there on a merit scholarship, and about halfway through the first semester, I was bombing. I was terrible. And here I thought that I was really awesome. And so the dean of the school calls me in and he's like, "You're going to lose your scholarship because you're getting a C in your major and it's 9 credits, and you're going to lose your scholarship if you don't figure this out." I said, "I can't believe that I can't figure out this painting thing. Like I'm learning a brand new language."
mhm,
And it was really, really challenging. And then one day it just clicked. And I really think it was when I took the color theory course.
mm,
And we learned about Joseph Albers and we learned about all of it. We had to do these amazing grids with these color squares and try to figure out how it would all go together, 100 different squares in a cube shape. And it was fascinating. And from then on, I understood and I aced the rest of it and graduated just fine. So, and from there, I thought, man, I really needed to be at ground zero to learn it, because if you go in cocky thinking that you already have it all figured out, I don't know how much more you'd learn. So it was a really, really life changing experience for sure. So good school.
that's awesome. And so, do you enjoy that analytical aspect to art making?
Uh, in theory, I do, because when I look at other artists' work that really resonates with me from current contemporaries or from the past, I will zoom in and say, how did they do that? Like that particular part, or how is that brushstroke saying what it's saying, and it's
Mm.
so simple, and so that's what I hone in on.
So give us an
I mean, I look
example.
at
Like, tell us one of these contemporaries or artists that really inspired you and kind of help open things up for you by analyzing their work.
okay, I'll start with my all-time favorite ever. It's John Singer Sargent, right?
Hmm.
So he's a portrait painter, and what I loved is that he would have these finely detailed faces, and then as the work faded out from the face, the actual portrait, the fabric and the clothes were just these long, loose brushstrokes. It was just referencing what the fabric was like, but it still looked like satin,
Mm.
And I thought, how does he do that? Like how is he able to incorporate both of those styles in one piece? So you know what the subject is, but it's it's the gesture of the mark. I guess that's what I'm always fascinated with. Or like a current painter who's becoming incredibly famous, Carol Marine, how she does all those still life paintings, and she'll do the rim of a coffee mug, but when she makes her marks, they're flat, and it's almost like she's painted a hexagon shape, but it reads as an oval. And I cannot figure that out. It's how our mind fills in the blanks. Like we know what we're supposed to be seeing, but they have a technique which is completely their own. And so I guess that's what I look at.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And her paint is like butter. Oh, her paint is so gorgeous. So
You ever see those paintings that look so buttery you just want to lick it? Like,
yeah, and that's see, in my paint, so it's and it's intentionally it's dry. I Since I use acrylic, I don't use hardly any water. A lot of layers. I like the flat brush work and over and over and over. And but then I love artists who paint very different from me. I mean, the subject matter might be similar, but their paint application is so different. And then I think, do I want to paint that way, or do I want to focus on what I'm doing? Is this more natural to me? Do I want to expand on it and meet halfway in the middle? So, but I think that I'm like most artists who can't quite decide where they're going, and
Mm,
if they're satisfied with where they are and they just want to improve on that, or if they want to kind of mix things up a bit, try something new.
interesting. W- would you say that you're an artist that's still looking for her voice?
It's a good question, because for a really long time I don't think that I had a technique or a style that you could pinpoint that I did it. That was my work, because I probably wasn't working enough, or I hadn't really settled on a style. And within really the last 3 years, I feel like I've honed in on that more, and you can tell that it was my hand that made the work.
Mm,
So if I line up all my paintings, I can tell that it was me, and other people can too. And I think that took a long time. I mean, I've been out of school since, mm, what was that, 98? And so here I am 20 years later, and I think I finally got it. So, but there's a long way to go. I'm not satisfied with a lot of the work that I do, and I think, all right, I'm never showing that to anybody,
mm.
or I think that it was good, and 3 years later I take a look and I'm like, I just want to gesso over that whole thing. Like, how did I ever think that that was worth the canvas that it was painted on? So,
Mm.
but I am not alone. I know that most artists look back at their work and think, what did I think about that? How did I think that that was even remotely good?
When looking through your work on your website, um, I I felt like there was a divide, and I felt a clearer voice. Not just so much a style, but it could be a style as part of it, but just the whole, not only the style, but just the confidence and the certainty in it. Um, the paintings that had architectural elements
Hmm.
in trees, to me were just in a whole different category. And then you had a couple landscapes that kind of fell in there as well. Um, and then some of your other subjects, like it was like there were two different minds that were working in those spaces. And
Yeah, and that's totally true. Some are just color field paintings that are just more abstract and have no reference. And
mhm.
then others are, I'm really trying to focus on light, shadow, form, things like that. So yeah, it really is just a mood thing. Sometimes I
And
just
I
need
think
to do
you're
loose stuff just
hmm
completely out of my head to deprogram. But then
hmm
some people like those more. So you never know.
yeah,
You
I
never
like
know.
your abstractions, like the ones where they were just like there was no subject to it. It was just the like transitions of color. Um,
Right.
I thought, wow, that's kind of cool. In terms of your skill and your and what you're doing, um, and then there were other ones that I could tell like you were really observing and trying to focus on certain things like your still lives. But I think like your trees and usually the trees that have some type of architectural element in them, or like you kind of
Mhm.
like do these little close-ups of a part of a house or whatever. Um, those I think are in between. And I think that's where you shine, where there's enough subject to know what it is, but it's very organic, almost abstract. There's more subject to it. It's very clear, like, oh, that's a tree, that's a house, right? But there's this beautiful connection between the living tree and the living air that's around it and the living light that's around it and the living shadows that are coming from it, and even the house feels like it's part of that organic breathing living thing. And it was just like, oh wow, like there's something there. And I actually believe that when I reached out to you, I think it was based on a painting that you were working on in the studio that was very similar. um it might have been a tree in there that you were working on. Um, and I was like, "Oh, wow, that's really good."
Well, that's good because I think trees are the hardest thing in the world to paint.
Really?
I just I've been struggling with that for a long time, and those are some of the paintings when I look back and I think those are horrible if
Oh.
they have trees in them. So there's one in particular that is on the website. It's more of a close up of the tree, and it's in winter, and there's a very dramatic kind of blue lavender shadow that's being cast, and it was like a early snowfall or something. There were still yellow leaves all over the trees. And again, this is Michigan, right? So it'll
Mhm.
snow when the leaves haven't even dropped. And um, and
Mm.
that one in particular, I think I did okay, but maybe because it was more of a structure because it was so much trunk, you know.
It's
But
true.
then the architectural pieces that I like are like another winter scene, Alley in Winter, where I'm really just focusing on the snow and the perspective and how the buildings, how the light falls on it. So I'm mostly concerned with the light and shadow, and I feel like trees are. It's hard to capture that if they're full of leaves or if it's
Mhm.
some sort of evergreen. I find that's hard to do. Um,
You know,
I'm not a detailed brush person, so I'm never going to get into that. So I want most of my trees, I just want it to reference that it's a tree. So
yeah.
you know that that's what it is. Excuse me. So, and part of that is a lot of times I do an underpainting on the entire canvas or panel or whatever I'm using as my surface, and I'll cover it in either orange or some sort of red,
Mm-hmm.
and then I paint on top of that. And so I let some of that peek through, and I try to let that create the dimension and the light. So, um, so anyway, I don't have to fuss so much with
Mm-hmm.
the shape of the tree.
You know, I'm looking at it right now, and underneath it, the early snowfall, right? And then underneath it, you have this bird eye view of Brussels. And
Oh yeah.
I really enjoy both of these pieces. But when I look at them, I'm clearly seeing why they work. Both of them work, and I think it's because um, the spaces be the quote unquote negative spaces that you have, the
Mm-hmm.
shapes that you're creating, both in the bird eye view, but also in the trees. Like when you're looking through all those branches, like there's a gestalt to it. There's a design that's in it, and then the spaces in between them, those branches and stuff. So I'm not looking at the branches. I'm looking at the shapes those branches create in space. Um,
Yeah.
and
I'm
those
glad you noticed that. Yeah.
and that's where the
Because we're supposed
magic
to
is.
paint the negative. Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's exactly what my goal is. You have to paint the negative space shape. You don't paint the branch.
Mm,
And I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because that that's just one of the key things that I was taught. I didn't figure that out on my own. It was and so if I ever get a chance to work with individuals and give them some tips, I'd meet with some uh, students, just novices, and so I
mhm.
always talk to them about negative space shape. So
Awesome.
you can go ahead though, because it's nice to hear you
No,
talk
I
about it.
will. I
So
will say on this painting, if you want to take it to another level, what I would say is what you do in the trees in terms of painting those spaces. Make sure you do that also in your snow. So that when I'm looking at it, it's almost as if you're painting the shadow on the snow. And it feels like it has a different treatment than the sky, like the air, and just being careful, like to paint that negative space within the shadows as well. Um, uh, does it make any sense?
yeah, it does.
Yeah. But I think like that's a really beautiful piece, and I think your values work really well. Um, you have the big telephone pole in the back, but the values are subtle, so like you feel its presence, but it's not overwhelming. It's not competing. It's just there because it's part of this little town.
Exactly.
It's not a tree in the woods. It's trees along a street. Um, so yeah, that's a really really nice little piece. And again, you did it down here in this bird eye view where you're just those shapes are just gorgeous in the way that they all play and dance together. Um, and then even the one underneath it, it's much more of just a straightforward landscape, but you kind of do break it up into some shapes. But I think that's really where um, your voice is going to really sing, is through even pushing and mastering and taking even more control over those spaces. Um, oh wow, that's gorgeous. Very cool. Nice color. Really nice. Um, but I can't talk about the paintings anymore because people who are listening can't see it. So they're like, what are you talking about? Gotta go to the website. um,
Right.
so where do you see yourself? Where do you want to be in the next 5 years as an artist?
I would like to show my work outside of our immediate area a little bit more. I sell most of my paintings, which is great. And however, I would like to have more opportunity to have a bulk of work that shows, um, at a formal gallery space. I've had opportunities to work with galleries, and I have some work in Chicago right now at Four Sided and at the Andersonville location. But um, but still I'm still reaching out to galleries. I haven't really pursued that very much.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just something that I need to do. Part of it is confidence. Part of it is having the body of work and being consistent with that. And we'll see. We'll see what this Michigan Lake series does. But I don't know if formal galleries like my work as much as just an independent buyer does. Do you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So I don't know how it would read on the walls. I've shown them quite a bit but locally more than anything, and that's just because of where I'm reaching out. If I were to pursue it more, but being in the heart of Michigan, it's not a huge fine art location.
Yeah.
So if I would have to travel with my work, I can't ship 20 paintings. It would cost me more than what I would earn if I had sold anything. So I have to think about geography,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think that that's actually been a hindrance. So I would like to go do that, and like I said before, I would like to spend more time painting outside and see if I can feel more confident
Mm-hmm.
being on location. And I would also like to get back into figure drawing because I did that for a number of years and I really enjoyed it. And then after I had children, I just kind of dropped out of that scene of going out with all the figure artists and setting up drawing models. Um, we're right here at Michigan State University, and they have a really wonderful art department, and they offer uh,
Oh, cool.
life models, but
Just don't do
we'll
any
see.
models in the snow. They might not like that.
No, no, that's more just drawing. It's not so much about light and shadow and things like that, which is what I feel like that's what my subject matter mostly is how those create the forms instead of just the line.
Mm-hmm. The I can so you're saying that you made a comment where you said that you sell most of your work, um and you said that you sell it more to like personal sales versus in a gallery.
Hmm.
um how did you say that? I know the essence of what you said, but um the way you said it, I have to go back and listen to this now. The way you said it was
I don't
actually,
know.
it was like, oh wow, that makes a lot of sense. um One of the things in your work that I don't feel is a sense of like uh what's the word I'm looking for, pretentiousness, right? And there- and so therefore I can totally see why like more of a local person would eat up your work. um and and I know that almost sounds like an insult, but it really isn't. It's actually like a compliment, and it's actually a compliment as a Michigan artist, because one of the neat things about the artists I've worked with in Michigan is they're very, very almost blue collar when it comes to their work. They're just there's a grind to it. There's uh an earthiness to it. Um and none of the ones that I've met and worked with, their works were really good. I mean, super, super good. Um but none of them came off as like quote unquote elitist, in a negative sense, or
Hmm.
pretentious. They just like they just got up and punched their clock every day, it just happens that they're painting. And um and and it's just very, very interesting to see that kind of energy come out of that area of the states. And I feel that in your work. I feel like a humility in there, and I think that would resonate with a lot of people. Um, it may not, it may or may not resonate with, like, some big gallery on in Times Square or whatever, but uh,
Right.
you know,
Well, I
um,
noticed that I submitted some work to various juried exhibitions,
hmm
and I don't do that very often either because I have to think about like the things I said before, shipping, the cost, just even to apply, the jury fee and things like that. So I'm really selective, but I have gotten into a few, but the ones that I've gotten into have been almost of that theme. Like Montana had a show at their gallery, and it was miniatures of some kind, so they had to be 12 inches and smaller. And so I got two pieces into that show, and then I had applied to one in Louisville, Kentucky, and so got a piece in there, and one in Naperville outside of Chicago. And but they seemed to fit into the themes of those shows really well. But anything that I've submitted to larger areas, things to California or Texas or New York, flatline, nothing out of
hmm
those. So I have to, again, I have to be really selective and make sure that my work fits into those things. And I've also been really hesitant with galleries about the 50-50 split, the
hmm
commission that they take, because I don't want to overprice my work and I don't want to get robbed. So there's a fine line. So that's why just direct sales has been a bonus. I don't have
what
to
do you
pay
sell
anything.
them for? Let's say it's 16 by 12 painting. Well, like what
About
value do you sell them?
$500, $600.
Okay.
So, and they sell just fine.
hmm
And and so the smaller ones, like I can sell a 4 by 4 inch painting for $100. And you can't do that on Etsy, and you can't do that in a gallery. Um, that I mean, I wouldn't do it in a gallery and then get $50.
Yeah. Yep.
So I've just kind of gone that route. And so the owner of Four Sided in Chicago, his name is Todd Mack, and I worked with him here in Lansing, but he has 3 different galleries in the Chicago area. And so because we're friends, he's given me a really awesome commission deal, and I've sold some work there, which is great. It makes it worthwhile, and we're working with each other and um, good friends. So it's that sort of thing, is that you have to make more connections,
hmm
um, and find the right location. I'll hang work at theaters that have big gallery spaces where people are waiting to go and see the play, and so that's nice because I can have 20 pieces up on the wall, and it's a solo show, and it's up for 2 months.
hmm
Whether
hmm
you sell anything kind of is beside the point. It's just nice to see it all hanging in one location. So.
Nice. Nice. You know, here's a crazy idea. Crazy idea. Um, and you, and I don't know if your friend, the gallery owner guy, um, is able to do anything like this. But if you are selling work through him, um, you might consider uh, working a deal with him where maybe he pays you a retainer, on a monthly basis in exchange for X a number of paintings. It might just be a different business model. I don't know if you have that kind of relationship with him or not. Um, where a lot of artists are trying to go out and they're selling piece by piece by piece. And if there's a market that's buying your paintings through a gallery, you may be able to work a different deal. Now, you probably are going to get less money on the back end because you're not selling it piece by piece, but at least you have consistency and you're producing, right? Um,
Right.
and so you have to kind of manage the pros and cons of that, but that may be something that you just may have a conversation if it's something that you feel comfortable doing. Um, and yeah, I, I've talked to I talked to an artist the other day, and that's the kind of relationship he has with his uh I guess it was a gallery owner, but she's kind of like his rep, and so she'll like put all this stuff in, but she basically pays him monthly, and he just produces X number of paintings a year for her, and he's been doing that for years with her. So so it's something out there, but very interesting. Um, cool, very cool. The so if you were talking to an artist, Miss Allison, and you wanted to encourage them and then send them on their way, um, what's a word? What's one way that you would encourage them?
Uh, well, I know that a lot of people say it, but just keep working. Find what your passion is, like whether it's, I mean, if it's abstract work, if it's representational, somewhere in between, collage. It's just a matter of uh, honing in, finding out what makes you tick,
Hmm.
and just making a lot of that work. Because even if what you first think is the number one interest, it might shift over time, and you might settle into something totally different. And part of that is just it's experimenting. How can I get to where I want to be? If I make this mark, is it the kind of mark I want to make? Maybe I should try to make this mark and you know see where my talents lie and what appeals to me the most. Um, and then I'll go back to the if you're a painter, don't paint right out of the tube. I'll say that
Mm,
again.
nice.
Mix your paint. Learn about color. I don't think that you can ever be too knowledgeable about color and how it talks to each other
Mm.
and how people feel when they see color. It's a big deal.
And you mix on a glass palette, right?
I do.
And is it a small palette or is it a big palette? Like, describe your work area.
Uh, let's see. I would say it's probably maybe 18 by 24, maybe a little bit larger than that.
Oh wow,
I
okay.
would 18, 18 by 24 sounds about right because I took a piece of glass out of the picture frame and then
Mm,
I taped the edge of it and
mhm,
I put a white piece of paper underneath it, like poster board, and
mhm,
I set that on the table. So then I have the white surface underneath. I clean it with a razor blade, and it's great. And it's acrylic, so it dries right
okay.
away.
Yeah.
I have to put you have to put saran wrap over it, spray it down real gently and put saran wrap over it and it might last a couple days if you've mixed enough paint. But most of the time, I use up what I have
Mhm.
and it's different than oil. But it's nice for my workspace and I like how it isn't oil.
Mhm.
I studied oil. I know how to paint in oil, but acrylic just really fits my style at the moment.
Mhm. That's cool.
But yeah, I have about five or oh gosh, more than that, maybe 8 to 10 different palette knives, and I always use one. I love this one palette knife, and every time I try to use another one, I think, nope, I like this one, and it is you can't even see the palette knife anymore. It's so covered in paint, head
Wow.
to toe. It's
So that's your palette knife,
about
and then you have 9 other ones just to help scrape paint off of it.
yes, yes, yeah, that's exactly right. So, and I'll probably never find another knife that I like as much as that one. And I don't even know what kind it is because I bought it probably 20 years ago. So
Wow, wow.
I hold on to my stuff. It's a relic, and I love it.
It's a relic. Nice. That's funny. Um, like, do you put any mediums in your acrylics?
I used to. I used to try to see how that worked, an extender or something like that. But no, I just add a little bit of water to my brush, I dry it off, and I use the paint. And that's it. And sometimes I put a matte, um, a matte varnish, so to speak, on top of it when I'm done. But most of the time I don't. It's just raw, pure acrylic paint.
Nice. But not straight out of the tube.
No, no, not hardly ever even white. White has to be, something's got to go in it.
Exactly. So now imagine you're just wrapping up, you're mixing, and you're mixing, and you're mixing, and you're mixing.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden you hear your tummy go, and you yell for the hubby to come bring you something. What is he going to bring you?
He's never awake by then, but yes, okay. He's a musician, and so he works nights, and I'm a morning person, so I
Okay.
see him at 2 in the afternoon. But no, if he did, um, it would be another cup of coffee, though I drink decaf. So I just like having coffee. But what
So
would he bring me?
your favorite food is coffee?
Yeah, I
Your
really
favorite
do
meal of the
enjoy it.
day is coffee?
But it's decaf, so there's no harm in that, right? So, my family had a coffee house for many years, and so
Oh, really? That's cool.
that was definitely lattes and chais and espresso and all that. So, anyway, beyond that, he would say, "Let's have tacos," and so
Mm.
that would be it. So we go down to the diner and eat street tacos.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
that's what we
Uh,
like to do.
do you like the hard shells or the soft shells?
Soft shell.
Okay. Corn or flour?
So they're flour mostly, I'd say. Yes.
Yeah.
And they have to be really unique. It's like the kind, like the Baja shrimp with avocado and
Oh,
lime juice.
shoot. Oh,
That sort of
wow.
thing.
Okay. Okay.
That
Living
kind
it
of
up, living
taco,
Luca.
not ground beef tacos. So yeah, the unique ones that surprisingly Lansing, Michigan has some cool places to eat.
Nice. That's very cool. Very cool. I would have never really pictured tacos and Michigan together, but you know,
Street food. We're getting there. It's getting kind of hip over here. So
you guys like if you ever have like one of the little food trucks or whatever, it would be a great
oh yeah.
logo to have a taco inside of a mitt holding a taco, right? Michigan tacos.
Ah.
That
Looks like an oven mitt. Yeah.
yeah, um, very cool. So, um, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, I have both a personal Facebook account and then I also have a fine artist account, fine art Alison Alfredson, and then I also have an Instagram account, Alison.alfredson.art,
Hmm.
and you can reach me there. Some of that's some personal stuff, but I try to mostly have it focus on work in the studio.
Hmm.
Uh, and then I also have a fine art website, which is AlisonArtisan.com, and that's through Squarespace, so it'll transfer you right over to there. But I try to keep that as up to date as possible. Um, yeah, so I would love to have people reach out and take a look, send me a message or what have you.
Now, I see on here that you sell the G Clay prints are available. Like, what's the process for people to order a print?
They can order it just directly through me, and I have a company in Portland, Michigan. It's about 25 minutes from Lansing, and they have scanned my work at my cost, of course. I take in a bulk of work, and they have a machine that they had custom made in Germany that
Hmm.
takes these amazing scans of work. So they lie flat and the machine just comes over and takes a really, really, really slow picture of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so then together they will print it out. They'll do a proof. I stand there and we color match. Like, oh, the print's going to be too green. It's going to be too blue. And so then they tweak it so that it is as lifelike as possible. And then they can print it out in just about any size. I mean, the quality is so good. You could do a 6x6 and blow it up to 36 by 36, and you won't lose one element of texture.
Wow.
It's really impressive. So RCP printing in Portland, Michigan.
With color correction part of it, is that a one-time thing, like where you go in, you do the color correcting with them, and then they save those presets so that anytime they print it out, it's spot on?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. I have to sign off. I sign off on every proof. So you kind of need to be there in person, if you know what I mean, to really know, or you could have a representative who can do it for you. But they take it so seriously that
that's cool.
It's really great. And when I learned a little bit more about giclée prints, I mean, the term giclée is just some guy who wanted a fancy word for print, and it really just means sprayed paint on paper. And so the name sounds really fancy, but you just have to have just a high-tech version. I mean, this isn't just a photograph that gets printed onto poster board. This is a big deal. So it costs a lot of money to take in the art and get it done, but the quality is outstanding.
That's awesome. Now, I see that you're on Instagram.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this or not. Tell me if you do, but you have a Facebook page, not a personal, but like an art page. In there, you can set up products, and you can then use your images, and then what happens is on Facebook you can actually set products up where people can purchase them. And Facebook, what's nice about Facebook right now is that they're wanting to promote this feature so bad that they don't take any money. So if you go to like PayPal or Stripe or whatever, they'll take a percentage, right? Or other websites. So like right now at Facebook, like whatever you sell it for, you make 100% on that. And
wow.
But what's cool is once you set that store up, that product page up on Facebook, when you can then connect it to Instagram, and when you upload an image to Instagram, you can tag, how you can tag a person? Well, you can actually tag a product from your Facebook store. And so when it goes out, there's like this little price tag or whatever on your image that when people click it, they can actually buy your print straight through Instagram.
Oh, interesting.
Something
Yeah, I didn't know that.
to look into. Yeah, so very cool. Alison, it was a really nice conversation with you. And I look forward to seeing more of your paintings of painted spaces.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be on the show.
Hi, my name is Terry Stevens-Horn and I'm an artist from South Africa. I have just completed the Core 80 course and I would like to tell you my experience about it. It is truly an amazing course. It runs over 4 weeks and over 8 classes where we do 16 design principles. And now for the first time, I am able to read and understand the work of the old masters and to understand why their work is superb and why there's so much harmony in their work. I used to be a copy artist and I had to rely on photos and images of photographers that already had a pleasing design. I had never been able to tell my own story. I just didn't have the confidence or the knowledge to do that. Now I will be able to apply what I've learned, and I am sure that I will definitely grow as an artist. It's not something that will happen overnight, but at least now I've got the knowledge and I know how to apply that. So I'm looking forward to see how my art will grow from here on. If any of you are serious about the art, it is really a course that I will recommend to you. It will be time very well spent, and it will be knowledge that will really improve your work so much that whoever looks at your work will relate to it on a subconscious level, not understanding why, but the pleasing rhythm and harmony that will be in your work will just make your work to stand out above that of other artists that hasn't applied the design rules. So I can really recommend this course.
In just 30 days, the Core 80 experience teaches you to decode the intentional design underneath great masterpieces. Through video lessons, assignments, and feedback, you learn to recognize the underlying structures like thrust maps, echoes, and gamuts that give master compositions substance and gravitas. Knowing how master artists and illustrators compose their artwork unlocks your ability to give your artwork more meaning and energy. Enroll today and get a 7-day no-hassle money-back guarantee at core80.com.